Democrats are finding it harder and harder to win the votes of ordinary American citizens. Instead, they have a new strategy: create a new voter pool. Let 16-year-olds vote, open the borders, and now give the vote even to violent criminals who are still behind bars. In Iowa on Saturday, Bernie Sanders argued that those who break America's laws still should be able to help make them.
In your home state of Vermont, that incarcerated people are allowed to vote.
Yes.
Would you commit to that idea? Would you commit to that on a nationwide scale?
I think that is absolutely the direction we should go.
Let incarcerated people vote. Keep in mind that plenty of prisons are located in rural areas. Most of them are, actually. It's perfectly possible that inmates could wind up running the town that holds them because they'd be the biggest voting bloc. Expect that to be a Democratic litmus test by the end of May. Author and columnist Mark Stein joins us tonight. Mark, the inmates should not just be running the asylum, but the town.
The thing to remember about Bernie, Tucker, is he's actually the front runner because, to continue with your asylum analogy, in the land of the entirely deranged, the fitfully sane man is king. and Bernie is the proverbial stop clock. Just 10 minutes ago, you mentioned a burst of sanity on immigration, where he said we can't have open borders because all the world's poor will want to come here. He sounded as crazy as you, Tucker. He sounded as evil as you.
He sometimes does that, I know.
I know. I can't tell them apart, Bernie Carlson or Tucker Sanders. And then every so often, he just genuflects to the insanity of the base and the party. But he's actually much shrewder than Kamala Harris and Cory Booker and all the rest of it. And if he doesn't blow it like he did last time, he's actually going to be, as I said, the at least fitfully sane guy, the proverbial stop clock in the Democrat.
Can I ask you a question that's been bothering me? Why couldn't you have a candidate who was populist in economics, who wasn't, any kind of supply side or libertarian economics, but more conservative on the social issues, who was focused on the country rather than the rest of the world, who was pro-family? Those are not incompatible positions, are they?
Well, I'd say that's actually where the sweet spot in politics is. You remember, like 10, 15 years ago, we used to have these people like Christy Whitman and George Pataki, who were so-called fiscally conservative and socially liberal. And I'd say, actually, the sweet spot is probably to be fiscally liberal and culturally conservative. And that's where old school socialists like Bernie Sanders would have been quite comfortable being. But Bernie's brother is like an old-school British Labour Party socialist. He's all about the workers, by which he means the British workers, not 6.5 billion other workers who want to move to you once you open the borders. And that's actually, I think that is actually the sweet spot.
I'd be very sympathetic to a candidate. I don't think they're smart enough to do that. So I got to ask you about this. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez started sporting a new accent while speaking at Al Sharpton's extremely tax-exempt conference last week. Watch.
The fight's been long, y'all. This is what organizing looks like.
That's right.
This is what building power looks like. I'm proud to be a bartender. Ain't nothing wrong with that.
Ocasio-Cortez says she's from the Bronx, and she's always spoken that way. She says it was code switching and that her normal day-to-day voice is the fake one. But she's not the first Democrat to discover a long-lost accent when speaking before an African-American audience. You'll remember. Watch.
I don't feel no ways tired. I come too far from where I started from. Nobody told me that the road would be easy.
Mark, if you patronized an audience that much, would you feel shame?
Well, look, in fairness, I'd say Hillary's terrible at it. Absolutely terrible. And Alexandria, if you're going to do it, you have to do it with, and I speak as a foreigner, so I can't tell the difference between Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and William F. Buckley Jr. All you Americans sound the same to me. But Hillary can't do it. And actually, I think that gets to the heart of it. Alexandria can get away with it in a way that Hillary can't, because I think for Hillary and Joe Biden, when he was doing, they're going to put you all back in chain. I think those people are saying, I want to be something other than white. take my whiteness away from me. I'm Indian, like Elizabeth Warren. I'm Hispanic, like Beto O'Rourke. Or I'm just whoever I'm standing in front of at the moment, like Hillary. And Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, whatever you say about her, is doing it with a much lighter touch
No, that's, I think it's a fair
Hillary
point.
Clinton.
I wonder, though, we're roughly the same age. Didn't you grow up in a world where people were encouraged to be who you naturally are? When you were a kid, could you imagine living in a country where people are supposed to be ashamed of how they were born? I thought that was the opposite of what we wanted.
No, and I lived through a whole generation of stupid songs about being authentic. Whitney Houston, Learning to Love Yourself is the Greatest Love of All. Sammy Davis Jr., I Gotta Be Me. And all of a sudden, we have politicians who are actually trying to pretend to be. So Elizabeth Warren is Harvard Law School's first woman of color, and nobody laughs. That's the insanity. We laugh at it, but everyone who matters in America takes that nonsense perfectly seriously.
I mean, is it sustainable long-term to tell people they should be ashamed of how they were born?
No, I don't think so. I think it's actually psychologically unhealthy. And I think that's what's interesting. For someone like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, she's a young woman and like she's goofing around with that crowd. For Hillary, it actually says something appalling about our permanent political class, that they can be in front of us for 4 decades and still not know who they are.
I think it's really, I agree with that. It's really unhealthy, I think. Mark Stein, great to see you. Thank you for that.
Now, also remember, as Democrats fuel even more baseless tinfoil hat conspiracy theories, this time a cover-up by the Attorney General Barr, look at this law. It's the obstruction law, 18 U.S.C. 1505. Look at the language. It requires intent. Any obstruction case hinges on whether someone was corruptly trying to influence the investigation. I think that's like if you have subpoenaed emails, the intent to delete them, clean out your hard drive with bleach pit, bust up your devices with hammers, and take out SIM cards. That might show intent. Joining us now to explain all this is the attorney for the president, former mayor, New York City, Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, a 9-month FBI, they concluded, no there. We had the House Intel Committee, no collusion. Bipartisan Senate Committee, no collusion. Attorney General Barr quoted Robert Mueller, no collusion. Now they've moved on to this. Let's talk about the law that I just mentioned.
Well, it's absolutely disgraceful, Sean. I mean, the reality is that to obstruct justice, you have to threaten, you have to impede, you have to get in the way of somebody. Let's go back to the one that Weinstein and all of his angry Democrats used to push, which is when the president allegedly said, the president said this conversation never took place. He said to Flynn, I hope you can see fit to drop this or not pursue this. First of all, you don't have obstruction by hope. You have obstruction by coercion, threat, I'll break your legs, I'll take your food away, or I'll kidnap your children. I prosecuted a lot of obstruction cases. Nobody ever started an obstruction sentence with I hope. And nobody ever did obstruction by putting out a legal memo for the whole world to see. And we're going to find out in a week or two how accurate Bill Barr's summary was. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to be 100% accurate. Bill Barr is a great lawyer, and he is an extraordinarily honorable man. I can't say that for the congressmen who are making all these wild, crazy, insane threats. Their claim of obstruction against the Attorney General of the United States is no better than the 2-year claim of obstruction by the angry Democrats that tried to claim the president was obstructing. The president didn't obstruct anything. And the best evidence of that is they completed their darn investigation. How the heck did it get obstructed? Nothing was obstructed.
And by the way, it was very clear in the Attorney General's letter that both he and Rod Rosenstein, who appointed the special counsel, decided very quickly, without any consideration of the Justice Department rule about whether or not you can indict a sitting president, but more importantly, it was being discussed the whole time, and there's also, beyond intent, there's no crime. So the president saying, I hope Flynn doesn't go to jail after serving his country, or firing Comey, which he had a right to do, or saying it's a witch hunt is not, nobody was obstructed.
This would be the obstruction case to end all obstruction cases. In other words, somebody obstructed to obstruct an investigation of a non-crime that he didn't commit, that he was innocent of, and then it turned out he didn't obstruct. That they interviewed 500 witnesses, got 1.4 million documents, got every wish fulfilled, and engaged in some practices that are truly horrendous, like raids in the middle of the night, bringing CNN in to photograph raiding Stone's house, for example. Leaking now. I mean, everybody misses the real point here. The real wrongdoing are the prosecutors who just leaked. I thought Mueller didn't leak. Ha!
Yeah,
you believe
point.
that one, and I'll sell you the Brooklyn Bridge.
Let me change topics for a second. In a few days, there's an election in Israel. Both of us have been friends with Prime Minister Netanyahu for a long time. You now have this crazy opponent, Benny Gantz is his name, who actually is pushing, he's saying to the people of Israel, oh, Putin is trying to help Bibi, Trump is trying to help Bibi, and without any evidence whatsoever. And I'm thinking, if there's one guy that has had moral clarity and been a Churchillian figure, understanding the moral imperatives of our time, it's Prime Minister Netanyahu on Golan, on Jerusalem, etc.
Well, maybe there's a consistency here. What the president did was to help Israel, you know, twice, with the embassy and then with Golan and many other things. The president had to reverse the betrayal of Israel by Obama. And so, I mean, the president has been a great president for Israel. But then also he comes after Obama, who was the worst president for Israel.
It's the best relationship we've ever had.
It just so happens that in helping Israel, he helps the prime minister. But what is he supposed to do, not help Israel?
This has been the best relationship between Jerusalem, now being the recognized capital, Golan Heights for protection. I hope the people of Israel understand this is the best it's ever been.
They've also developed a real good alliance with the Arab countries around them, so that they pose now a real substantial defense to Iran.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good to see you.